My understanding of Iceland is very, very... Okay, so I'm going to go through my understanding of Iceland that happened before I did any, like, a modicum of research, which was just...
Have we started, by the way?
No. This is a part of the process. Don't insult the process. Okay, so my earliest memory of Iceland as, like, an actual place that people live in, rather than, like, a punchline in a TV show, because I don't know if you know, but like every second Disney cartoon always had like the Iceland Greenland joke.
Yeah.
But like I think it must have been 2008 or 2009 maybe, where I realized that my Nintendo Wii had like a news function where like you could read the news on my Nintendo Wii. And the first story was last McDonald's closes in Iceland. And I was like, oh, okay, people live there.
Talk about that. That sort of fits into...
For sure, yeah.
Into also...
The
history.
collapse.
First ever McDonald's hamburger in Iceland was eaten by David Oddsson.
Okay, we'll explain why that's funny later. Sorry, I'm just totally imagining like that seems like the Icelandic equivalent of like the Gorbachev Pizza Hut commercial.
Yeah, it's sort of...
Didn't Bill Clinton like go to Burger King or something? Well, it's a great hamburger.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be great forever.
He also famously, when he was in Iceland, went to the hot dog stand, the SS hot dog stand, which is just what it's called, and it's unfortunate.
Hang on, I'm sorry, what? Operation Paperclip, fucking eye-opening.
The oldest hot dog stand in Iceland is called the SS hot dog stand, and it's from
it's from
like 32 or something.
Yeah.
It's older.
They copied the hot dog.
Yeah, it's not what you think. The SS actually stands for Schutzstaffel.
Okay.
And Bill Clinton went there and he was like, "This is the best hot dog that I've ever had."
That is on some sort of American.
Hot dog I ever had. He had one with only mustard, and then you could go to that stand and I'll have the Clinton.
That is on some sort of conspiratorial like red string cork board kind of.
Yeah, the hot dog stand had like a basement.
Just like a bunch of emails. I'm going for hot dogs.
It's actually an interesting small tiny bit of history is that hot dog stand was there when Iceland was invaded by the British in 1940, and right across from the hot dog stand is a house that was built in 1911 by Eimskipafélagið, which is like a shipping company, and their old logo was a sun cross.
Oh my god!
So there was like a big swastika on one side, and then the SS hot dog stand on the other side.
There's just like a hot dog. There's some like someone being like, yeah, okay, I kind of get why it's happening.
It's like literally on the harbour, and they have to like walk through that street to get to the Parliament. So they definitely saw.
You see SS hot dogs. You see the swastika. They only changed the swastika like 10 years ago or something.
Actually, no. It's still they just put a plaque over it because the house is old enough to be.
You can't change the outside of the house. I think because it's so old.
So just hit it, but it's there.
UNESCO World.
There's no swastika exception in that law protecting.
No, they're like this
buildings.
Swastika is significant historically.
Yeah, culturally or historically.
And everyone keeps saying like it's not a swastika, it's not tilted, it's a sun cross. Get with the program.
Yeah, that's what I say about my tattoo as well. But people don't listen.
It's just me that's tilted. It is straight.
Hey, it's your weekly corner Späti. It is me, Kieran, and I'm joined by Rob.
Hey.
And we have two wonderful guests with us to explain Iceland. Why does it exist? What have you done? Why do you have to eat that sheep's head that I keep seeing videos of shown to me? Steindor and Andrea. Say hello.
Hey,
hi. Hello.
Yes.
Fellow podcasters, we should say.
Fellow podcasters,
we'll get a chance
yes.
to plug it at the end.
Yes.
But.
I mean, it's...
Yeah, we can plug it. It's in Icelandic. So.
Yeah, you know, it could work.
Yeah, if anyone's
ASMR.
studying, then, you know.
Yeah, wants to know about Icelandic film in Icelandic.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we need some movie plugs at the end.
Okay, we'll talk about movies. He's the movie person. My ADHD stops me from watching movies. But, okay, let's see. So I want to talk a little bit. We've been doing this a couple of times. We've done country profiles. We've explained, Czech Republic and other countries, presumably. And I'd like to talk a little bit about Iceland, and because there was an election recently, that's a good excuse to talk about this country. I don't need a reason, but here we are. And I thought I'd ask you and pick your brains about various points in history, because I still love the SS hot dog stand. It's very hard to focus and not think about the SS hot dog stand. Because you have to understand the image I have in my head is like themed, but I'm sure it isn't. God damn it. All right. So, but also like there's a kindred spirit of with Ireland and Iceland. I believe every saga of every famous Viking ends with, and then he fought a great big battle, stole a woman from Ireland and retired in Iceland, is basically how I've been told they all end. But the actual country of Iceland was also colonized, kind of, by the Danish. And they owned that for a while. Had like a fucked up system where like they owned all the decent land and everyone else was a sheep farmer that like had to like seek year-long employment and couldn't start families unless, you know, they could prove they had enough money to actually sustain a family, which seems like a cool rule. Lutheran Church also involved in that. That's also fun. But that little brief interlude leads us to, I'm sure a bunch of stuff happens, but skip ahead to 1904 when like independence happens. And I want to actually ask you guys about this because there seems to be contested. You say 1918.
Well,
I say 1944.
1944 was so in 1918 we got self-governance,
Yeah.
self-governance. Except on everything except for
Foreign policy,
foreign policy and defense matters, which was just like the Danish crown was like we got you there.
Yeah,
and to be fair, most countries today they have self-governance, but on foreign matters.
Yeah, you could argue that we don't have foreign policy control now.
You guys are in NATO, right?
Yeah. No, I mean Iceland's history is basically like the parliament. Alþingi was established in 930 and
oldest parliament.
Yeah, that's also
I was
contested.
told in the
but
airport.
people like to say that. And then that went on for a couple of years, ended in a civil war, and then Iceland was like, we can't govern ourselves. Actually, like we need a king up in here.
Yeah.
And so that's how we lost our independence. And then ever since it's just been like we had the Danish for a while, and then we sort of broke up with them while they were occupied by Nazis, and just immediately hopped into the lap of the Americans and
preemptively invaded, I believe, is the term that the Americans use.
Exactly, and sort of been there in the cushy
bosom
of and Iceland is interesting in that it's literally on like the Atlantic ridge, so it's like half US and half Europe.
Yeah.
And it culturally a little bit too. Like we're not as like Nordic model as the Nordic countries. We have more like
American
liberalism.
Yeah.
Free market capitalism.
Yeah, exactly.
All that good stuff.
I mean that was one of the things that I saw by looking into the like post 44 history is that there isn't like, unlike the other Nordic countries, there isn't this social democrat hegemony. Like the welfare state kind of arises eventually, but it's not through the same means. You're kind of governed historically by the Conservative Independence Party for most of the history.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which
I want to jump in quickly. Like, what are you taught about the history of Iceland as kids? Because I mean, Kieran mentioned this, Vikings and stolen.
That's what we're
Celtic
told.
Women.
They stole our women.
I have to say, I found some excellent race science from someone who said this is from
let's get into this.
From an Icelandic.
We usually do this in hour 2 of the podcast.
children's book that said.
Here we go.
I'm not going to try to say the name, but it elaborated on this idea that their excellent stock, emphasizing that Icelanders possessed a mixture of Celtic intelligence and the inner strength of Norwegians, which gave birth to national culture which is hardly similar to anything in history.
Where was this stereotype of Celtic peoples back during like all of Ireland's history? Like, they're so intelligent. Definitely not like crude drawing of an ape that gets labeled Paddy or something. Fuck.
Well, Hitler was really into us.
Yeah.
Hitler was also really into the Irish. But that's only because we defeated the British. But I mean,
we're actually both historians. So you really hate this label. You really don't want it.
I'm one of the worst historians, I would say, to graduate in Iceland. So.
It'll fit right in this podcast.
So it's hard for me to sort of distinguish what was I taught as a kid as opposed to just what I know now.
Yeah, as children, it was very patriotic, and it was like we were brave Vikings who.
I mean, this was the 90s, so like.
Yeah. So
I'm hoping that they've changed some of this.
Yeah, we took on adventure and went on our ships away from the tyranny of the Norwegian king. And
yeah, actually, like similar to the U.S., it has to do with land and taxation.
Sure.
Yeah, like the settlers of Iceland were
libertarian.
Yeah, exactly. They were like, "Fuck this," Ólafur Hárfagri.
Yeah, the hairy king of Norway,
who didn't cut his beard until he had like amassed all of Norwegian land or something,
sure, Movember,
exactly. And so that's sort of the origin story that we hear, and then they like went up by the Isles and like stopped over in like Orkney and like took a bunch of slaves, and that's sort of our DNA cocktail there. I mean, we did learn this.
Yeah, and then the independence fight that is presented as very heroic and not just kind of like a thing that was happening all around Europe at that time of nation states forming. And
sure, yeah, the independence of Iceland does coincide with like. I don't know, October Revolution in Russia, German Revolution, Ireland becoming independent. Like there was miners' strikes in Norway and stuff like that. Like the whole continent was just popping off. So yeah.
Well, it's like a broad anti-colonial movement, a global movement. In World War I. So
the kings got their asses handed to them by.
Actually, the Danish crown was like anticipating this sort of. They were a consumer.
What is called the educated tyrant. What is it called?
Enlightened.
Something.
Enlightened. What is it?
What's the
Philosopher King?
No, Philosopher King.
Enlightened.
What's the one the Americans to say? There's never been like a benevolent dictatorship.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Enlightenment was also happening, and for this reason, there's a lot of like because Iceland has old culture, like all the sagas and stuff that was specifically in Iceland for kings of Norway and Sweden and Denmark. So there's a respect there the Danish crown had for Iceland's history, not so much the current situation in like 1900, but they were like, well, I guess you're like.
Yeah.
I guess you are, you have something there.
The king was a little upset, right? Didn't he write like a letter like, well, I understand why you're going independent. I'm kind of annoyed that, Hitler is here in my house right now and you do this to me. But like, still. It's kind of mean, but.
That's your decision, but, could have come at done this face to face.
Yeah, texting essentially.
Walking through the beach of life, and the Danish king looks back, and my hardest moments, Iceland, you weren't with me. And I was like, that's right, fuckers.
There was two sets of footprints, one of them running away from the beach.
And that was us.
But fair.
It's very, like in actuality, the independence was sort of just given to us. Because I think probably like the Danish crown was like, we don't want to have an uprising. We'd rather just like give you some little governing power and like keep you in the fold.
Yeah.
Situation.
Where does the Independence Party play in that? Like, is that? I mean, because it's in the name, and it seems like
they don't they can't stay claim to having made that happen or anything like that.
But then they were the biggest party for I don't know, not for.
So my understanding is the Independence Party actually arises almost in tandem and a little bit later, because this is also around the time that like mechanized trawling was happening with fisheries and stuff, and then Iceland discovers actually a source of revenue for them. Because I can understand like a Danish crown being like, yeah, fuck this island, they're not making me any money, and then like suddenly we have better boats. And we get all this money from the Marshall Plan as well, like after the war. So
like Iceland has just benefited mostly. Like the reason that Iceland is a first world country is basically because wars. Like every single war that's happened, like Spanish Civil War, we were like selling salted cod, and everyone was like, "Oh, the Blessed War," Great
We loved the Spanish Civil War.
Who were you selling cod to? Which side? Look, all Spanish people look the same to me, says some Icelandic fisherman.
And then the Marshall Grant was like, I think.
We got the most of any country. It was like we were completely unaffected per capita. Yeah,
Sure.
completely unaffected by the World War II, mostly, But
Yeah, fuck, hang on.
but then they're like, oh yeah, here, take more money per person than any other country from this thing.
Yeah, I mean, sorry,
And,
that's just the perfect example of like just on the bare face of it what the Marshall Plan actually was. It's like it's there to rebuild Europe. Here you go, Iceland.
Yeah.
Well, it makes more sense if you consider it's to create like the new American-led global capitalism.
Yeah,
Iceland had a very
stop
strategic
communism from
position in the
popping
North
up,
Atlantic.
Yeah.
With
I mean, I think when the Marshall Plan was happening, like the full force of like globalization, like Americanization, hadn't really. That started more in the 70s, 80s, I think, at least in Iceland, because there was a lot of pushback there
Sure.
to our American culture. But the base was there.
Yeah, there was the American base. Yeah,
The Marshall Plan was just like, we're paying you to keep this base here because
Yeah.
we're going into the
For-
Cold War, and it's like.
and then
For the reason Rob mentioned why he's been to Iceland, it's just
Yeah.
the lay point.
very convenient.
but yes, speaking of the racial stuff, I think Iceland was the only country where the American military agreed not to send black soldiers.
Oh.
Because it was specifically, it was uncovered decades later that the authorities had been like, it's hard enough with your white soldiers intermingling with our women, and then like, but
During the war, there was a whole thing that was just simply titled "The Situation."
yeah, it was called The Situation. It was like,
Oh, yeah. No,
there's
Ireland
a
did that.
situation here. Our women keep fucking soldiers.
Isn't there like a whole generation of orphans or like fatherless kids or something?
Yeah, well,
Hermansson.
Yeah, that was I wasn't going to
son
try
of a military man.
Right.
Herman is also a name, but it also means soldier. So
Right.
Yeah. So there was like and Iceland has always like we sent away Jewish refugees in World War II. We have always had like a very staunch immigration policy, like
so well.
yeah, pretty maybe one of the worst ones in Europe.
Yeah, the Danish are catching up.
Yeah. Oh, they are making a run for it.
Got the rule book from that. Honestly.
Yeah. Rob has always wanted to do the like Super League table or the Super 8 table of which country in Europe is the most racist. There's a lot of contenders.
I mean, I think we're a strong contender, honestly.
Ooh.
Yeah, because our
Belgian
racism,
Congo.
Certainly highest,
Well, yes.
highest in your weight class.
Good
I completely
point.
agree.
Ice in the weight class.
our racism doesn't come to the forefront because of our immigration policy, which has kept it from ever like. It's very easy when you live in a homogenous country to be like, I'm not racist, and then like it slowly starts to change, and then you can see all the racism kind of bubble up to the surface.
It's the whole like, I would totally
but,
fight
like,
if I was being robbed.
Icelanders are like racist against Poles. We're like truly just we're ready to be racist against anyone.
Oh, the British were into that as well.
Lithuanians.
Yeah,
as well.
even.
A lot of this kind of stuff.
Excellent.
So also with the base, because the military base kept kept basically the little municipalities next to it alive with work.
Yeah.
So in around the turn of the century, the Americans have a bigger focus with their military. The forever wars. Really ramping up.
Yeah, like Russia wasn't so important anymore, so they were like trying to like back out slowly.
So they're
Iceland.
like, we might move the base away, and Davíð Oddsson, who we'll probably get to, the prime minister at the time, is like, strikes a deal like, actually, like, we'll support, we'll sign on to the coalition of the willing, but you gotta remember that we did that, and then like a couple years later, they're like, oh, actually, we're taking the base anyway.
But now, crazily, they're back.
Yeah, well, not with a full base, but like there's always regular NATO operations, like Northern Viking airstrike plan or whatever.
We named it for you. Don't you like
So flattered. Yeah,
this is I think that leads nicely into a precursor, or like what I've had described to me in the articles I read as like the first stage of like Icelandic capitalism, which this article, this is maybe something I want to explore a little bit. This article called The Octopus, which I was like, I can't find anything written about this in Icelandic, go to Google Translate, what is octopus in Icelandic, throw that back into Google, get a lovely video of Minas performing on Christmas Eve on national television and like wrecking what I have to assume is the national broadcaster's like soundstage. Minas, a good hardcore Icelandic band that I forgot about until that moment. But yeah, so what the octopus is the supposed 14 families of Iceland that very early on captured industry in that long stretch of like beginning of independence towards the end of the Allied occupation in 1944 to like capturing important industries like import, transport, banking, insurance, fishing, and even, to your point, supplying the NATO bases or the NATO base was also like apparently an industry enough to sustain an oligarchic family. But yeah, I'm wondering what you could tell me about the 14 families, if this is like how much this is a thing.
Yeah, I don't know how like precise that is. I think the octopus analogy was like this one like TV special that kind of put that out there, but it was essentially saying that there were like a certain number of kind of oligarchs or whatever that owned like much of Icelandic business and industry and all that. We in the 80s they start handing fishing quotas to specific families, and by owning fishing quotas you could also get collateral, like you could use them to get loans because you know they were like any other
it's an asset.
It's an asset, yeah. So the people who got handed the fishing quotas become very rich in the 80s as well. So that's like the biggest boom of what ended up becoming the bankers and the people who like made the country collapse in 2008 famously. and then you know, there's always these new bubbles of like you know, new businesses and it's always kind of surrounding like the same names. You see the same names popping up.
Same clusters of names.
Yeah.
So like a lot of these families have last names, which is not super common in Iceland, and there's actually a law against taking up a last name.
Yeah,
so
you can't pick any name you want. You have to get your name ratified by a committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And also with this, for anyone who doesn't know, I think there's the patrilineal naming system, which is you take the first name of your dad and then put son or dottir at the end to make your name. And that, I'm assuming that also means that like women don't take their husband's names.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Yeah. Because the name then just stays. Interesting. Yeah. Because I have this article here that like I found that kind of named some of these names. The Thors family.
Yeah.
The Ben family.
Oh yeah.
Laufus. Laufas.
And then sometimes, some of them are like place names.
Yeah.
So like Engey is an island.
Yeah, the Ben family, which is called the Engey family of the island outside of Reykjavik. But Thor family it goes back to like fishing. They made their money in big fishing and then, you know, banks and now pharmaceuticals. You know, they like the newest guy there. He would buy up like a newspaper just to like change he would buy a newspaper and all of a sudden there would be these stories in the paper. Like we would know that he owned the newspaper because he bought it through like a shell company or whatever, had some guy front it, and all of a sudden there were these stories about like Björgólfur Thor is best friends with David Beckham. See the pictures. They are both shirtless on the beach.
How ripped they are.
You're like, after it came out that he owned
you're just like, really? This was the first thing that you put in there? Just like a picture of you being ripped on the beach?
Wait like a couple of weeks. Wait one news cycle. That's but okay, I actually want to correct you a little bit here because I've read some stuff in Icelandic that actually all of that is a lie.
Because is it possible that you read this in Morgunblaðið?
Is it possible that I read this in MLB.is? Yes, possibly. Because there is literally 14 families, this little rhetorical device seems to be used quite a bit by this newspaper to say the whole thing is not true. I then Googled that newspaper and found out that one of the editors is David Utz.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
it's the editor-in-chief.
Davíðsson.
The senile
I think we have to
editor-in-chief
introduce
right
him
now.
now.
Yeah, we gotta talk
three
about him.
times.
Yeah, we gotta
you
talk
summon
about him.
You summon
He's
him.
like the,
I mean, like
you say his name three
the
times in a
the Ed
podcast
Sheeran
studio.
cameo in Game of Thrones of Icelandic politics is like very obvious. There's like sticking out like a sore thumb just in every little corner.
So he's the mayor of Reykjavik in the 80s. Then he runs for parliament and is elected in 91. Immediately becomes prime minister. He's with the Independence Party.
Yeah.
He's prime minister until the early 2000s.
14 years, I
yeah.
believe. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
maybe the longest. Yeah, I'm not quite sure though. But then is foreign minister for like a hot second before he decides to quit and anoint himself the central bank governor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Despite not being an economist or anything like that.
Yeah.
And he does that until the financial collapse, where he is somewhat blamed for it. And
No.
the incoming leftist government or center-left government kind of changes the law in order to be able to fire him, which was not allowed. So he's out of a job. Immediately becomes the editor of the biggest, most known newspaper, and remains there to this day.
Which is also like it's the newspaper of the Independence Party.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and all the fishing industry and the business interests.
The quick shorthand of understanding the Independence Party that I have written down in my history is brackets rich fishermen, close brackets,
Yeah.
as opposed to the Progressive Party, which I have written in brackets rich farmers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So this is very like Ireland.
My impression of Oddsson is that he was like student in the 70s, kind of like outsider or trying to like take over or climb the ranks,
Yeah.
and then
He's a
ascends
big,
to the
big
highest
fan
levels
of the Chicago school,
Yes.
and sort of like, but he brings this like idea of neoliberalism into the Independence Party, or like his crew does.
Yeah.
But he also has this sort of like Boris Johnson-esque quality to him, that he has like crazy hair and is like he like did comedy when he was younger.
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
And so he's also like
That is the trajectory
fun.
for comedians, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, he always thought he was always like, people kept saying he was funny though. He's so funny and witty. And then everything you read that he said is like, this is nothing. This is really nothing that he was saying.
truly
there.
isn't.
He was just had crazy hair and was like a little drunk sometimes.
Yeah.
I love how this is just like surprising to anyone who doesn't like tip their toe into the comedy scene of any country for 5 seconds. Like, no, they're all monsters. You know, I say this as like someone who I haven't done comedy in 2 years, but still like,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Don't trust anything we're saying, right?
God,
Yeah,
no,
we're
no.
comedians, so
Yeah.
we shouldn't. Well, I mean, to be fair, like we don't really fuck with stand up that much,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
where the
improv
worst of them go.
improv comedy. Those people are all gems and
No bad acts there.
yeah, nobody who's touching other people too much or anything like that.
Wasn't that the guy who came up with the like, let's wear our underwear in public? Oh, never mind. CCB, it's gone now, I guess.
No, yeah, the UCB. Yeah.
You're thinking about UCB.
No, CCB's around. Yes,
Yes.
of course.
The Berlin one.
Yes, so as mayor, he was the because we mentioned the McDonald's. That was your one impression of Iceland, was that we don't have one.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it opened in '94, and that was like the high watermark of the sort of the like neoliberal sort of Americanization.
We kind of second tier joined the European Union through the European Economic Area with Norway and Liechtenstein. So we had all the kind of free market and the free movement of labor aspects, but none of the political stuff. We don't have any members of European Parliament, or we could kind of say stop at some point regarding like social policy. And all it kind of
all of these decisions that have been made in history are reversible. NATO, you can get out anytime. France did it once. Don't look at what happened after.
So he opens the first McDonald's in '94.
Takes the first bite of the first Big Mac.
Well, you opened it. You gotta do it.
And it was closed.
Yeah, I think 2009 or because I think McDonald's you have to buy certain stuff from certain suppliers or
like
something.
for it to be a proper franchise, you
Yeah.
have to import
And
stuff.
because the
and
krona fell by like over 50% against the dollar and the euro in 2008, then it became too expensive so they changed the name to Metro, and it's basically the same thing.
Yes. Okay.
It is somehow worse though. But I actually, in just like a crazy coincidence, went there on the last day that it was open, and I was just super hungover, and I had this plan with my friend.
That's what McDonald's is for.
Yeah,
I feel like.
we had drunkenly the night before come up with this idea of creating a sandwich where instead of bread you have 2 burgers. And so
Didn't KFC do this a few years later?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I guess
double down?
the double, yeah. So we went in there to buy 2 burgers, and then we were going to take them home and like do like ham and cheese and lettuce and everything, and put between the 2 burgers and eat it.
Yeah.
And we got there, and there was like a line around the house, and we were like, "Wow, everyone else is also." Thinking the same thing as us, like what's happening?
Last chance, we gotta get our last Big Mac.
Yeah, so that was, I mean, and then we ended up doing it, and it was very hard to swallow. But yeah, but that was like the last McDonald's.
Yeah, the last burger sold is still on display somewhere in a glass cage. Yeah, they put it in like a hotel lobby or something in a glass cage, and I think there's like a
About 10 years, it looked pretty decent.
yeah, I think there's a webcam stream just showing it constantly.
Ooh, interesting.
It's starting to look pretty gross.
Yeah.
Well, it should have looked a lot grosser a lot sooner, I feel like. Okay, so yeah, I guess this leads to what we've already kind of talked about, but this like second era of Icelandic capitalism, almost the because you mentioned David Hudson coming up as this like person who takes over. He kind of like gives positions to people who also think like him, neoliberal school, which I've heard referred to as the Locomotive Group.
Yeah.
Named for a magazine in the University of Iceland they took control of while they were students. And
it was all kind of this kind of libertarian or neoliberal, I guess.
Yeah. Ideas, yes. So
they would bring like Milton Friedman to Iceland and have him do a lecture.
Good.
Oh, great.
Just wonderful.
Searching those lectures for cryptic hot dog references.
Command F. Jesus Christ. But yeah, also largely it was a strategy of like asserting themselves as like the new ruling class of Iceland, as opposed to what kind of seems like a stodgier and more nepotistic system beforehand. Like this would seem like the only way Hudson could get in, because is he from a bigger family or is
No, he was kind of an outsider, really.
Yeah. So that seems like the strategy to do that. Yeah.
At the time that he came in with these ideas, like the Independence Party was like very just like conservative and like
Their old slogan used to be "class with class," like every class together, kind of.
All right.
Moving forward.
So like a German Volkspartei or whatever, that like wonky German concept of like this is a party for everyone kind of thing. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so the thing that I just want to make sure that I haven't got anything. So like this kind of leads to a precursor of what we're going to talk about next. But like in 1998, he starts a bunch of privatization of Icelandic banks, in particular. Landsbanki, I'm pronouncing that wrong, I'm sure.
No, it's very good.
Oh, okay, cool. It doesn't have one of the TH sounds in it. It's handed over to like people in the Independence Party, Kaupthing. Similarly given to Progressive Party people, who's we haven't mentioned too much, but they're playing second fiddle to the Independence Party for the entirety of Iceland, basically. And then like a new bank is formed, Glitnir. Yeah. And that's given to a family called Askir.
Oh yeah, that's more like I think they're more like the kind of new businessmen. It was called Íslandsbanki and it was privatized. I think the first one to be privatized, but Landsbanki, that goes to the Tor family basically, who we mentioned. And I mean, it's more complicated than that, but they run it. So they're like a father and son team. They made a lot of their money in Russia selling soft drinks, I think.
Cool.
And I was in the University of Iceland in 2007, like a year before the collapse. And I was studying history, but I was doing Russian as like the Russian language as like a minor. And because he paid for it to happen at the university. There was no Russian language studies, and he paid for it completely. So in the first class, there was like 10 of us, like nerds, sitting there. And he comes in like with a photographer wearing a suit, Björgólfur the older tour guy. And he's like, hey kids, yeah, you know, I gotta go soon. Time is money.
Classic Icelandic accent.
Yeah. He does say he did say time and money.
Fuck.
Time is money in English.
Oh, okay.
Kind of just leaned on a table, took a photo.
So hard.
Time is money. English is also money.
Yeah.
And also Russian.
I wonder if I'm guessing he's not paying for it now. But, you know, he was supposed to support this like most aspects of Icelandic society after that became like supported financially by these banks or these big groups. So like you'd go to any kind of like little festival in the countryside and it would just be bank logos. Like everything is much more fancier than it used to be. Like everyone loved the banks.
So what was it? Yeah. So we have you know, Big Macs. We have neoliberal capitalism. And like the Russian 90s I've heard described as like this like boom time, or like what was it like kind of to, I mean, I don't know, I've heard different descriptions, like just here's a little context that shocked me. This New Left Review article referenced specifically 94 to 2007 as like a complete change, like
for sure
in Iceland, and I actually found the numbers from their report. These are just the Gini coefficients. In 1994, Iceland had a Gini coefficient that's for those who don't know, the measure of inequality in a country of 0.26, about the same as Scandinavian countries. And in 2007, it had 0.44, which is just above the U.S.
Yeah.
In 13 years.
It was rough, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but that's more like this around the turn of the century rather than like, I don't know. So, I mean, we grew up in the 90s and sort of like got a little bit of the taste of the old society.
Because it used to be like, you know, the banks were state-owned, but they were like corrupt. So you couldn't get like a housing loan, a mortgage or anything unless you kind of could smooth talk the like manager of the bank. So like, you know, you could, if like my family or like actors and artists and they would get mortgages just because, oh, it's nice to, you know, be the nice guy who gives a mortgage to these people. And at the same time, inflation was so rampant that these mortgages would just disappear basically in like a fire of inflation. So like a generation of like well-to-do people got their housing for almost free during this period of time.
There's also 1 year that was taxless.
Yeah, there was a taxless year, yeah.
Because taxes were paid before, and this was what, in 19...
Yeah, they changed it to like, you know, ongoing, like, what do you call it, like pay-as-you-go kind of system.
Sure, yeah.
So, like, there was this 1 year that nobody paid taxes, and that's when my parents bought their apartment.
This is just Ireland. I cannot, like... The amount of people in Ireland who bought houses when the Irish pound was no longer pegged to the British pound and then became a free-floating currency, and then like it collapsed and then houses are worth nothing, or like, fuck it, we'll buy a house. Oh God, like you hear all this stuff summarized in like, we've been recording for 40 minutes and you're just like, how did no one see anything coming? Like, I mean, this doesn't seem in any way sustainable.
Everyone did. I mean, a lot of people did. Just nobody wants to be a spoilsport when everyone's getting free money from the bank.
Exactly.
Like, hey, this might be a bad idea, maybe.
People just like carrying their like widescreen TVs and like fucking deer in the headlights. Like, what, me?
Yeah, when all the
it's Black Friday every
There's a
day.
wider system we're all a part of? No!
When all the banks collapsed in 2008, like, they would blame the public, well, you all went out and bought flat screen TVs for like your loans. And
well, that is what happened, though. Yeah.
But before we get to the crash, so just this like tons of billionaires who like appear in the 90s and 2000s. I've heard described. I was about to say they're described as, but I believe they're self-styled business Vikings.
Yeah,
they did like.
Cringe.
Thing that happened, and even our president was really involved.
Yeah, the president at the time. I was at the famous lecture that he gave at the university, where he called them the Vikings that would go outside and seek new adventure and land by investing in like scamming Dutch people out of their like.
I was looking.
They're pillaging.
Yeah. Well, that's what Vikings did.
And then, like, the room was full of like professors of history, and then the lecture ended, and it was like mild applause, and then like just a bunch of hands going up. Like, so when you said that they were like special and like kind of Superman and like Vikings, what did you mean by this?
So it's really interesting because I went into the archives because I wanted to see what like the news in. Before we get not to jump too much ahead, but like of the crash of Iceland was like being reported on in like American and Australian media, like pretty much the only time these like ABC News, both of them, are going to ever like talk about Iceland, basically. And they had just adopted that story. They literally called them the Business Vikings. They had a little cartoon showing them. Like literally they just showed like bank guys wearing the like helmets that no Viking actually wore because why would you?
National press just loves running a story on how Iceland is somehow this small, unique, like sort of like testing station for things. Like because we're so small, we can like try out new shit, like a referendum on a new fucking constitution and like feminism and like like it's just like they just like without reading the article they just press send.
It's the OECD's beta version, the early alpha release. There's something that kind of came up through some of the things that Rob was sending me that he found, and also just from me remembering stuff. But in this period in the UK, there was this thing called Cool Britannia. Which, well, like, sure, like, it's a dumb name in retrospect, but it was this period of like Britain actually had some sort of cultural soft power with like Oasis, Spice Girls, Pierce Brosnan Bond movies had like after a huge break of like no Bond movies.
Blur and Damon Albarn, who's now an Icelandic citizen.
Oh wow,
excellent. But. So that's one I want to ask, because was there a similar thing happening in Iceland? Because there also seems to be like a kind of cultural thing going on. This is also around the time Björk becomes a thing.
Just say Björk.
I'm just doing it.
We have to say it both ways for the listeners.
For the listeners.
How are you saying,
Björk. She does drop the umlaut internationally, though. Like when does she?
No, she keeps it.
I feel like I've seen it a million times at the umlaut, but okay, fair enough.
Yeah. I'm guessing the media doesn't bother with it. Like, where is this on a keyboard? Oh, fuck it.
The other thing that I remembered vaguely is like in around this time pre-crash, we also have, speaking of Pierce Brosnan Bond films, a role for Iceland in Die Another Day.
Yes. It's actually quite perfect because it was the most like branded Bond movie of all time. There were so many sponsorships at the same time as Iceland was like going nuts with the same thing essentially. And then it's shot in Iceland with this like ice castle or whatever that they
over
had.
a diamond mine, an industry that Iceland is famous for. Icelandic conflict diamonds. And also I don't think they ever say it, but I think one of the villains is coded as Icelandic, Icelandic who got like educated in the UK because his name's Gustav Graves.
Oh yeah.
Okay, interesting.
And he's the one who owns the Ice Palace and stuff like that. And it's just I'm just kind of trying to remember, was this like Icelandic cultural moment happened at this time as well?
Yeah, I mean there were all these bands, Sigur Rós, of course, and Moom, and
of course
and
that's the other one.
And then Iceland has a long history of inexpensive or free at times music education, which I think leads to this. You know?
Yeah.
And then some other cultural exports, and now we have a lot of Hollywood studios shooting movies in Iceland, and a program specifically to refund them for whatever tax they paid.
Sure.
So I guess that's coming up as this at the same time that like in the late 90s, sort of like the Americanization or like globalization of Icelandic culture is because there was always pushback before the early 90s. People like they didn't want American films to be shown, or like there's a really like hard pushback against these sort of cultural products that were being brought in.
Yeah, hip hop.
Yeah, exactly. But then
I wonder why.
We asked the Americans no hip hop on the NATO base.
And then that all changed in the 90s, and so at the same time as that, Icelanders sort of like start looking abroad and like imagining a bigger world. Also, like Icelandic society drastically changes from being very like old school to sort of like being able to see the world and opportunity and sort of.
And then cheap air travel happens as well, like in the early 2000s.
Sure, yeah.
A lot more, a lot more trips abroad. I mean, I have this theory that like the Icelandic krona, which is one of the smallest currencies in the world, independent that is, like free floating, is that it's kept higher than it should be because it allows it's bad for exports. But it allows every Icelander who makes enough money to go abroad for a week or two and live like a king and feel like a superhero for a little bit.
That's like a social pressure valve.
I mean, that's how I've heard it described with, I don't know, like a rise. I don't know if you two agree, like a rise of like tabloid culture in the 90s and 2000s. Like, what are these businessmen doing? But also like, internationally famous musicians or authors or something like. Yeah, you can be proud of, there's someone on the world stage.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of like what happened in like what you're describing with musicians and stuff in Iceland, and why that doesn't really happen in Ireland. Although 90s boom times, we also have like the Corrs and Enya and stuff like that, like coming from Ireland. But the thing that also happens is that there's a protectionist cottage industry of culture, if I'm not mistaken, kind of why like every second famous American musician is actually Canadian, because they have the rule to like actually prop up Canadian musicians. They capture Canadian market and then they export. That kind of seems like what can happen in Iceland, of like, we have an Icelandic musician, we're giving them radio time, we give them assistance to have studio space and recording, and then look, now they're famous and that's great or whatever.
It's like, definitely a big export, or like, and also a marketing thing. Because like, I mean, honestly, just Björk alone, like, has brought so much money into Iceland. It's like unbelievable. Like I'd be happy if she didn't pay taxes for the rest of her life, honestly.
We'd still make the money back. Because I've hinted to it on Twitter, but I have been watching just the like video of her assaulting the tabloid journalist in Bangkok, and I'm just like, I have nothing but respect for that.
This is the same time she was in was the lead in Lars von Trier's Dancer in the Dark movie, where he like treated her like shit and like lied to everyone that she had been so crazy that she tried to eat a shirt. Or something, and then like decades later she's like, how do you even eat a shirt? What is this room?
Where he's like abusing her, as he does all his female leads.
Yeah, I was gonna say famous gaslighter.
This is I think this is a good.
That's the Danes for you.
This is a good chance to promote the live stream every Wednesday at 9 p.m. We do watch a big playlist of videos that we have just dubbed Euro vibes, and Rob put one in there that like made the entire stream speechless, of the like Lars von Trier talking about how he's like a Nazi or he sympathizes with Hitler. Not a great man. Have you not seen this video? All right, let's.
Yeah, I think it was that can.
It was that can, because it's 10 minutes long and he keeps going.
He's in Vichy, France, and he says this. It's
crazy. You literally see, what's her name?
Kirsten Dunst.
Kirsten Dunst, like whisper in his ear, like she's saying, "Stop, stop." Stop talking about how you sympathize with Hitler.
I mean, honestly, I'm surprised that a Danish person is a Hitler sympathizer because they were occupied. Would be more. I would not be shocked if it was a Swedish person. But that's just me hating on Swedes. There's a very complicated system of in Nordic country cross hate.
and
picking orders.
And you can also on an ideological level, they're these are countries that make their money from colonialism and weapons exports and oil and all this garbage. So
owning Berlin apartments.
Oh yes, and cheap clothes and stealing artists' music.
When you spell it all out like that, really, it is pretty bad.
Oh god, yeah, it's terrible. But but
welfare system. Oh my god.
But hang on, I think we all forget that Sweden did have a female prime minister for 5 hours.
7 hours.
Now it's the Nordics are just the epitome of girl bosses. Because I think 4 out of almost all of them have a female PM or a president at this right now. I think.
Yeah,
and Sweden kind of doesn't, but
yeah,
kind of doesn't. But Finland and they have a racist. Wonderful. What's her name? The Danish one?
Oh yeah.
No.
I forget. The Social Democrats, the racist Social Democrats.
I can name other terrifying policies.
But guess what? We have a twist.
In ghettos, the crimes apply twice. That was one of my favorite policies of theirs.
That's also a common theme in Iceland, is to just hide behind female
hide
leaders.
behind women.
Hide behind women.
That will get us to current day.
But are we going to just over the crash?
No.
How much more crash stuff do you have? Because you had some post-crash stuff.
I mean, I don't know. Do you have any stories to share? Anything?
Obviously, the one thing that we get here all the time is but Iceland did it right. They bailed out the people and jailed the bankers, and it's just
wrote a new constitution and everything.
Exactly. I guess yes, some of this is true, but it's really not. Yes, we did jail some bankers, not enough, and also, but Icelandic prisons are hotels. They're literally, you can walk out of them. One of the bankers that was actually
this is so good.
He got while he was serving time, he got in a helicopter crash. But you could basically on the weekend you'd be actually guys, I'm checking out, I have some investors that I need to show around, and so he was in a helicopter crash with some investors while he was serving time.
I can't fault that because I do have to respect the industry or the cultural tradition of rich guys insisting they get in the most dangerous form of transportation.
We should not try to stop any of that.
No. The richest guy in the Czech Republic died recently because of a helicopter crash.
He didn't die. He just
it was okay. No, it was a crazy time for sure. Because the news kept kind of slowly trickling out, what is happening with the banks now? And then one Monday morning, there was just everyone was freaking out. I went to the bar to just watch the Prime Minister Geir Horte, part of the Locomotive Group, address
a bit
the
of a
nation.
disciple, right?
He was economic minister under Oddsson or something.
Finance minister. Foreign minister. I forget, but he was prime minister at the time, and he ended his address. He said we are shutting down the banks. We are we are just we put in this emergency law essentially, which eventually led them to being split into domestic and foreign operations.
Okay,
so you could
to protect the Icelandic sort of
and then the
economy.
The foreign operations would be slowly kind of they would be made whole over a period of 10 years. And a lot of investors got locked into Iceland with their krona investments, and it was all a mess. Which is why they called in the IMF to kind of be hey, you gotta give these investors their money back.
Second second IMF bailout to happen to a developed country ever since the UK in 1976.
That was the speech where he ended it with this "God bless Iceland."
Yeah.
So you watched it live?
Yeah, it was in a bar right outside the Landsbanki headquarters, and I was looking as the bankers and the staff just poured out of the bank and into the same bar, just ordering just shots and being like,
it was a little bit like apocalyptic.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, my parents, I think they were in Boston at the time, and they just like were fucked. Like they didn't have any currency or anything. They were just like stuck there.
Yeah, if you were a student abroad, I had some friends who were studying abroad, and all of a sudden their like entire budget for studying 1 year abroad had like doubled essentially. So they got their student loans or whatever, and had planned to spend this much money, but it was all in Icelandic krona, and it was worth what it was.
Yeah,
before
I have the numbers here. Went from 70 krona to a euro to 190 krona to a euro.
Yeah, that's the biggest dip at least. It did, somewhat stabilize,
But yeah, it was a fucked up time, and then sort of the pots and pan revolution, as it was dubbed, started amassing.
Yeah,
and yeah,
the government was ousted, and they were lighting fires, lighting a Christmas tree on fire outside Parliament. And they kicked out the Davíðsson as the central bank governor, new election, and in that election there was first ever majority of the Social Democrats and the Left Greens, which was like a new party that kind of came out of the essentially what, not quite communist, but kind of favorable to.
My understanding is the Left Greens came from a combination of smaller left-wing parties, and like a split from the Social Democrats after they went into coalition earlier or something with independents, something like that.
I'm sure some people left at that point, because the Social Democrats went into this grand coalition with the Independence Party in 2007, and then a year later they were out, and
so
everything else collapsed.
Yeah, they didn't really have any goodwill.
There was like one politician from a female politician, I've forgotten her name, from the Social Democrats, who was also kind of blamed for the crash as well, obviously from the part in that coalition, I'm assuming.
And then she got cancer. A lot of Icelandic politicians, they get cancer and like just cool off. They get in a hot mess, and then all of a sudden they have cancer, and they're like, I'm stepping away from the political stage to deal with my cancer.
Yes.
And they just peter out.
Sounds like a conspiracy when you phrase it like that.
No, it's just weird how many of them have had this exact trajectory. I'm not saying anything.
The Independence Party has a nice deal with NATO to get the cancer gun that they use. The CIA uses.
I mean, maybe stress, it does something to you, like fucking bankrupting a whole country, like makes you get cancer somehow. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there. Anyway, and then we get Jóhanna. Yeah,
Jóhanna Sigurðardóttir, first ever democratically elected, openly gay head of government.
Yes. Okay. And our first female head of government.
I remember this, because a lot of the press was just like, you did a double whammy, basically. Yeah.
So what was how would you describe, how politicizing was the event? I mean, because you have these big events, similarly across Europe, the financial crisis was, we can think maybe 2016 in the US, were people nonstop, we have to do something now, or
people were very angry, but I think we were so awash in neoliberalism at that point that people didn't even there was no kind of basis for any kind of more radical perspective. But the left-wing parties won. They were like, we have a 4-year coalition. We're going to do all these reforms. We're going to rewrite the constitution. We're going to change the fishing quota system. All these different, we're going to apply to join the EU as well, because of course the Icelandic krona was blamed.
The brief period when, because it's the only time that you guys are ever a majority for joining.
And then of course this was all undermined very steadily by the business interests, and they lasted the 4 years, and then they were out again, and we're back to
the people that bankrupt the country. And the finance minister, the current finance minister is
from the Engay family that you mentioned, the Ben family.
Excellent.
How does that happen? Is it just under so much debt or like outside pressure from outside investors, like a Greece situation, or what's
IMF came in?
I just
Yeah.
I was working at the Ministry of Finance at the time.
Oh shit!
And it was very interesting. I went to a lot of meetings with these IMF people, and they went softer on us than they do most countries. I wonder why again.
This treatment.
Yeah.
Just like, why?
they had a great time in like some hot baths.
Yeah.
You know,
They
they were
had
in a really good
cozy
mood.
time.
Yeah.
In Reykjavik.
It's like
used to this.
it's they come in and they're like, look, we're going to treat you like the occasional Serb we put on the International Criminal Court. Like, it's mostly for Africans. We all know that.
Yeah.
Like, ugh.
No, so why? So what was the? How did the business interest prevent?
I mean, there was an election to elect like a council that would write the new constitution, and some of the people from the Independence Party, the kind of like low-level people, like they sued the government to have the election annulled, and all the judges that the Independence Party had placed in the High Court.
Yeah, because like the justice system is like really like takes a really long time to change it. And so it's just been steadily.
These are all
party of all of history.
They have all Independence Party appointees, and they are all lawyers who went to the same program as Oddsson and all these guys.
Wow.
There were some like inconsistencies with the election, but nothing major. Which is funny because now Bjarni Bende, who is also a lawyer from the Independence Party, is the prime minister. And this election a few months ago now had some major problems. There was like a whole a constituency where they didn't lock the room where the ballot boxes were in, and like people were let in and out just randomly, and
it's like literally like a farce. There's too many doors on this building, and just like everyone's like, oh,
it was like Benny
coming
Hill.
out. Yeah, exactly.
and it was wild. And,
Down at the door factory, which has been a voting station for today.
So they're like, oh, we're gonna. First they recounted the votes, which ended up changing weirdly the result.
Another great example of like a press release being sent too fast is that for a hot moment the parliament was for the first time majority female, which
all
then
the international media was like first ever female parliament in
and then just like
parliament.
as they finished, because there's a weird system in Iceland for like it's called jöfnunarsæti, and it's like it's sort of like gerrymandering or something, is that it's so complicated almost no one understands it. It's like weird math, but like in the course of the evening, all these women sort of were bumped out, and like some awful men were bumped in their
so it's
stead.
like we were going to have like the youngest ever member of parliament, who would also have been the first Muslim in parliament, right?
Yeah. No, she's a Kurd. I don't know.
Oh yeah, Kurd. Yeah, I mean but she
first woman of color.
Yeah, first woman of color, I think, elected at least into parliament, and she was being interviewed and everything, and then they counted again, and just like her seat went to a guy in a different constituency from the same party who was like a middle-aged white guy. She was like, oh well, it was good for 8 hours.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
the Swedish prime minister.
I know that's just like, again, going back to the like this specific system that no one understands, and like the beta test of like the developed world, and there's just like some stodgy old guy being like, come in, gentlemen, we've learned how to make math racist and sexist.
Yeah.
But the point was,
boys.
I won't. You won't believe it. Writing on the window, and then suddenly your pen drops.
Beautiful mind.
Close up on the eyes. Yeah.
the point I was trying to make was that like now there was another inconsistency with the election, but the ruling Independence Party formed like a committee, and they were like, actually, the inconsistency wouldn't really have changed anything, really. So it's fine that they happened. Like very different from this, like when they were trying to rewrite the constitution. So they rewrote,
which has not been.
Yeah, they rewrote a constitution. It was going to change a lot of things, but and people are very much in support of it. They never ratified it. It's been too long now. Everyone's given up on it, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
So that didn't happen either.
So we have this, like, I guess you can call it institutional inertia, right? Independence Party.
Oh, so much of it.
Like this constitution. So how does the pots and pans, the people on the ground, how do they relate to that? Like, how does it change over time? Do people get frustrated, burned out, changes into something new? I don't know. Maybe you were there.
Yeah, I mean,
stories.
that's sort of where the best party was birthed from. Is that, well, at this point, it's sort of like every single party has been in bed with the Independence Party because they need sometimes they need more support than they almost never can just be just them and
you never get a plurality of the vote.
Exactly. So they always need, so everybody's suspect because they've all worked with them. All the left, like
well,
right now.
they're the only game in town, so
exactly. Like right now, there's a coalition of Independence Party, the Farmers Party, and
the left Greens.
and the left Greens, which is like the biggest fucking brute moment. Which is why, like now, I mean, people feel like they just don't want to vote anyone.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where the best party came from. Is that was just a guy who was a comedian. He was just like, I just want an office job. I just want a good salary, and what I'm promising is free towels in the pools. That's what I'm promising. And he was very honest about like not knowing how to govern, and it wasn't really his plan. He was just like, this is a joke. I'm doing a joke, and he got the majority of the vote.
Yeah, cynicism was much more stronger than any radical. Yeah. After a year or two, it was like, oh no, actually, cynicism is better.
But that's kind of seems like a on the face display of like a retreat that happens in a lot of these moments of just like where the best anyone can really hope for is just like, get the house, suburban living, world can burn around me, as long as that's like it's like the evil version of the internet would call the grill pill or whatever. Just like, I don't care about politics, I just want a grill kind of thing. And because like he's just like, I just want the steady job, and then everything else is ephemeral.
The what's his name again?
Jon Gnarr.
So Gnarr.
Yeah,
if I said that all right. He's the mayor of. He's elected mayor.
He was the mayor for 4 years,
and it seems like the best party had much better results in the city rather than on like a national.
Yeah,
level.
They never went national. There was like a offshoot party called Bright Future, which I think is basically was like the liberal party.
Yeah, who ended up actually going to bed with the Independence Party, and then they formed a government, and then that government failed because
let's just call it a hot dog relations scandal.
The father of the current prime minister, still a prime minister, the Independence Party leader, Bjarni Ben, my former boss at the finance ministry, his father turned out to have helped. We have the system of like, if you're a pedophile, if you happen to be a pedophile, if you like going into the basement of the hot dog place, then you go to jail. But then you can ask to have your like record cleared, essentially, which is like essentially so you can run for office. You can have your law degree back and all these kind of stuff. This kind of went away a few years ago.
Restored honor is how I have it translated. Yeah.
So he was known to have helped with that. Yeah. The Bright Future liberals were like, we're not going to stand for this snap election. The liberals are completely destroyed, and the Independence Party goes back into government.
Yeah.
So Bjarni,
one day I might be a pedophile. I love that hot dog place.
And before that happened, there were the Panama Papers, where again Bjarni Ben, the leader, was named in the Panama Papers,
and also the then Prime Minister
from the Progressive Party, the Farmers Party, who in a televised interview was confronted about this.
Yes, we talked about this a couple episodes with the I guess with the Pandora Papers.
Whichever one it is.
The op. But because that was like basically the only person ever who really faced any consequences who was named in any of these things, basically.
He was kind of hounded out of very fairly hounded out of office.
Yeah.
But he didn't have I guess he didn't have the backbone of like the Independence Party people who are like, no,
just
drive on through, ignore it.
I mean,
you can't be cancelled.
Bjarni Ben, he has the nickname Teflon Bjarni because nothing sticks to him.
God, you guys really do love ripping off the Dutch. Their prime minister is also called Teflon.
Oh, really?
Mark.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Mark Rutte, Teflon Mark.
He just passed Merkel as the longest serving.
Yeah, he's now the
European
longest
head of
ruling
state.
Oh, wow.
head of government.
Or will shortly.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you got to be non-stick for that.
Exactly. And there's a lot.
Also, there's a poisonous chemical in you.
Well, like
Which is also true for him, I think.
mean, he goes on stage. It's the Netherlands. He goes on stage and he talks about how difficult it is to wear blackface, and it's fine, according to Dutch politics. Yeah. Okay. So it's interesting you mentioned Bright Future, because there's also just like one thing that struck me is just some of the party names, which I find very fun. Interesting to point out that like Iceland is one of the only two places where like pirate politics still is a thing, which is very retro.
The best party was like kind of related to the pirate movements. I think, I don't know. I saw like unofficially, or they were later.
I think some of the people like involved ended up maybe in the pirate party.
Yeah. I mean, there's the pirate party is strong in Iceland, I think, because of the. I mean, what's the thing with the information law?
Yeah, they're just anti-corruption. They ask a lot of questions in Parliament, get a lot of info out into the open. It turns out like all the members of Parliament were getting like huge payments for their car usage, and like some people would seem to be just driving all day in order to rack up enough money.
That big circular road around the whole island. You just do a couple of laps of that.
Yeah, you haven't been in Parliament for weeks, and like, where is he? He's just driving in circles.
Tokyo drifting in Reykjavik.
Yeah, basically like Fast and the Furious style member of Parliament.
Yeah, except that he looks like literally a sow. Just right. Sorry, no, he looks like he's about to. This man looks like he's about to explode. It looks like he has like 18 hot dogs every day, and he just
That's kind of what I imagine Vin Diesel will look like when he's older or stops working out. Like,
yeah, well, I mean, this is a pink man, and he's just like doing the ring road over and over again in his fucking SUV, and then getting loads of money for it.
Nice. It's a good grift if you can get it.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, respect to him for keeping that up for a while.
The next one that I wanted to talk, just wanted to mention briefly, because as soon as I saw that party name, I was like, nerds, fucking nerds. I wanted to like wedgie the party name. Responsible Future?
Yeah, not nerds.
No.
They're like queer danker.
Okay.
They're like COVID deniers.
But that's such a nerd name! It's just
Wait, what is this in Icelandic?
Ábyrg framtíð.
Oh, wow, I've never heard of
they
it.
didn't get any votes.
No, they got. Well, hang on now. Hang on, Steindor. Not to put you on blast like this on recording, but they got 144.
God, sorry, I retract my statement.
0.1% of the vote.
Yeah.
Which I have to assume is just them and their family.
Yeah. I think it was less because you need to have a certain amount of signatures to be able to put forth a list for a vote. Yeah. And I think they got in the end less.
Yeah, way less than you could. Yeah,
like they had more signatures than votes.
So. Well, hang on. No, I'm sorry. You're cornered on the street by a queer Denkin, and you're just like, sure, I'll sign whatever you want. Just get out of here. I'm sorry. Responsible Future really did sound like your mom telling you not to drink or something. I don't know. Right. So I guess that kind of wraps up everything we have in the notes. But I did want to turn to you guys about like. Because we did talk a little bit about this like international perception of Iceland as just like you have it all figured out, which is kind of this thing that's extended to all the Nordic countries, if you like. But like, what are the issues? Like, what are actually people voting on, or what do you think are things that need to change, or there's movements or anything to do? Is there any kind of glimmer of hope in Icelandic politics?
Yeah, so we live here.
Yes. So it is like Ireland.
But like you say, like we, like as Icelanders, we're like in different countries, and people will be very excited to have met an Icelander. Like they will ask a lot of follow-up questions.
Yeah,
which is fun rare. For the first little bit, and then you have to go on podcasts and talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's we don't mind.
Yeah,
but
so
like,
maybe if we just get it out of the way.
Yeah, just I'll refer you to the Corner Späti episode.
Exactly.
We'll make you a QR code or something.
Yeah.
But it's fun. But like some people are weird about it. Some like, why are you so interested in this?
Yeah, there's a lot of Icelandophiles.
Because people think this is like this socialist paradise in the north,
sure.
and now like we have this government which run by the left Greens, which I used to be very much into before they ever got into power, and turn out to essentially be kind of more talk
conservative. cliff, basically.
I mean, the leader now, the Prime Minister, Katrín Jakobsdóttir, who is now formed the government with the Independence Party, where they are dismantling the healthcare system, essentially, and, there's all these problems. And she used to, there would be, buttons that the young people would carry of her face, in a Che Guevara style,
Yeah.
Oh.
They were considered very radical, and at some point maybe they could never get into government because they were too close to old style communism.
Yeah. And they also, but their whole shtick is protecting Icelandic nature.
Yeah.
And so they're because they have green in their name, they're perceived as being aware of the crisis that we all face as a
people
as
everywhere. Globe, yes.
But their their take is more we want to make a national park somewhere. They're not even their environmentalism isn't even global. It's just
that's such a
they're there's a piece of swamp here that needs to be protected.
That's very interesting because it's so interesting, the idea that Iceland needs a national park, because friend of the show, a friend of mine, Hugh, has been there a couple of times, and his understanding of what Icelandic people tell him is just the middle of the country is where tourists go to die. That's untouchable.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's also just because they're dumb. They don't know that the country, we know that we know that Iceland is actively trying to kill people there all the time. This is the thing that we've been taught from just being a child, is that you have to really, be aware that people die just outside. They go outside and they die, but tourists don't know this, so they're just I'm gonna swim in this fucking river, and they're just drowning there. So
I mean, people have this perception of Icelanders being this environmental green people. I mean, all our household energy is renewable and
geothermal,
all that.
Right?
Geothermal and what's it called? Water energy, hydro. But the left Greens, who have a less ambitious plan in terms of the climate crisis than most European countries, and or the Nordic countries at least. And Icelanders per capita have a higher carbon footprint per person than any other European country, except Luxembourg, I believe.
This is that one politician doing rings around the country.
I mean, there's no public transport infrastructure to speak of. Everyone has 3 cars,
and these changes are only happening at the municipal level. So the good thing about the Best Party is that since it came to be, there's been a center left majority in the city ever since, and they they were around the center left area. So there have been major improvements in the pipeline with city planning, urban planning, and public transport and stuff that might move people away from cars, make the city a little bit more livable and walkable, and you can bike and stuff.
Yeah, but then on the national level, the politicians are just let's get more aluminum smelting happening in this country. Let's do it. If we all go in the same direction, we can make our footprint bigger somehow. Truly.
Is that just because of the Constitution, or is there an urban rural divide there?
Your vote counts almost double if you live in the northwest compared to the Reykjavik suburbs, essentially.
Yeah. So majority of the country just lives in the bigger, the larger Reykjavik area, and
which are the strongholds of the Independence Party and the progressives, the farmers.
Yeah, so they get their votes are. So it's very interesting because I think the people, the country, the people that live there, the majority of them are more left leaning, but they can't get power because of this sort of how the system is built, and also they very predictably do fight a lot between themselves.
Sure.
And people have been trying to change things through the unions in the last few years, more radical union bosses, but they are actively being pushed against as well by kind of the inertia of the system, like you said.
Any workplace in particular, or which union?
No, this the most radical one is called Eppling, who is they have a lot of it's Iceland is kind of too small for like specific unions for each
industry.
Okay. Yeah, there are these. They do exist, but they tend to like merge into larger groups.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Now, is there like? Sorry, I just have more questions. I'm turning into the accoster on the street. Is there like? Because I'm like this divide. Like, does that usually that produces like culture war or something or some like frustration, right? Like, so is there like people like complaining about those city people who are doing all this dumb stuff?
There's a lot of culture war stuff happening right now. Yeah. Well, like a big portion of the Icelandic national football team turned out to be like, abusers recently.
There you go.
Yeah. So there's a big like,
and even one of them who is playing or was playing with Everton? No.
Everton, who got
sacked.
Yeah, he got picked up by the Manchester police for some child abuse charges.
Okay.
Hot dogs all the way down.
There was a rumor
the episode name, doesn't it now?
Yeah, there was a rumor that he got like, a kind of a honeypot thing that happened, like where he was like entrapped. But still,
I was tricked by this child.
Yeah.
I mean, do you really want to tell the world like I was tricked by a child?
No. I mean, no, I'm not saying that.
The options on the table are.
I am, after all, just a footballer.
Or I enjoy hot
These children are more cunning than you They will.
You gotta watch out for them kids.
Icelandic man mob by swarm of child.
If there are enough children that attack you, they will get your clothes up.
Oh, you get 3 of them and a trench coat on top of each other's shoulders. Take on the world.
But and this is a big thing of like, has cancel culture gone too far? Thing is like a huge thing now. Some politicians have been trying to push like the turf stuff. Hasn't really taken a foothold, fortunately.
Not, thankfully. Turfism is I guess there's just like, there's not, I mean, again, with the homogenous society, there's just, I don't know, there's not enough trans people in Iceland to make it an issue. Like, at least I don't feel like people are picking that up as much as like the UK, which is just like
I mean, like in the UK it's incredibly manufactured. Like, you look at the polling of like anyone who actually cares about it, and they're just like, no, what are you talking about? And then the remaining 2% that care all have columns. So
the reason I ask is because I feel like that's often what fills the vacuum, right? Like if there's like an opening or political opening, and then when nothing happens, you just turn to
jingle the keys.
Yeah, exactly. People that need different ways to jingle the keys. And with the best party, you mentioned like one of my stereotypes of Iceland. This is maybe specifically like a Reddit thing, but they're like the mayor. I forgot his name already. Gnar was like he wants everyone to watch The Wire, or like he performs at the Pride Parade and stuff. And that's kind of like
famously
cool.
said that when after they won that election, he was like, I will only go into negotiations with people that have watched all 5 seasons of The Wire. He did say this. Like,
there was like kind of an embarrassing photo with his coalition partner where they were like holding the DVD or something.
Okay, now it's funny. That's to that level, that's
and it's like, almost being kind of shamed into like,
But it just,
I mean, it's like politics is dead. There is no future.
But this is being done immediately, like in the middle of the financial crisis, right? Like 2010, 2011. Is it already over? That seems so depressing.
Like Ireland did nothing in response to the financial crisis. Not until like 2014 did anyone like do anything in protest over the financial crisis. There was even a sizable delay in the US. Like, when was
you mean
Occupy?
Like if Occupy was 2011?
Yeah. So like it was only the Mediterranean countries that were just like went out immediately.
Well, Occupy was always explained that like people like gave Obama a chance, and then 2010 with the rise of the Tea Party, and then it kicked in, just the next year.
Yeah, I was actually living in New York at the time in the beginning of 2009 when so I was my first day of work. Everyone was watching the inauguration because it was the 20th. And at the same time, they were like burning the Oslo tree in the square in Iceland.
Yeah, it's called the Oslo tree. It's given to us by the Norwegians, and we burned it in
front of Parliament. And everyone was so hopeful and happy in the US. They were like, oh my God, Obama's going to change everything. And they were so, it was so sweet to watch that, and then like go on the Icelandic like media and like my friend texted me, he's like, we're we're setting the tree on fire.
Well, Obama did say The Wire was his favorite show, so
They could have.
that's
maybe,
why things were going to be good.
God damn it.
Remember all the drone strikes in The Wire?
I did love that bit. And also, don't look into any of the things the guy who created The Wire has ever said. They're not good.
He's a unique
Yikes.
character.
Which I think we can wrap up our discussion on Iceland and leads us into a little something that maybe Rob would like to talk about, which is the movies.
Oh no, I didn't have much to say. Just I know you're into the. Do you have any movie recs? I know Iceland has a little bit of film industry. Anything to recommend or share?
We have the podcast Bíó Tvíó, so if you speak Icelandic,
Okay, hang on. We've had this problem before, and I think this is a new. This is our new like press guide or whatever. If you understand Icelandic, you should listen to this.
I see.
Because we've had this before. Like we had a Czech podcast on recently. I was like, actually, a lot of people who don't speak Czech could probably understand that. But yeah, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, same situation, right?
Yeah.
Well, like actually, yeah. What is the mutual intelligibility with like Swedish and Norwegian? And
I don't think if you're Swedish, you can understand anything.
No, I
we're saying
think
in
like
this.
Icelandic is a very old language because like as an island, sort of it didn't develop as fast as anything on the mainland. So we sort of understand more Swedish and Danish. Well, not no, I don't.
no one understands Danish.
Danes don't even understand.
I've seen
Danish.
some Swedish sketch shows.
Yeah,
It
but
seems
like
to be a big joke of theirs.
Like Norwegians and what was the name of that sketch? I think I know which one you're talking about. Cameloso.
It's the one I'm talking about is the one where like Danish is a fake language and everyone's been faking it the whole time. Yeah.
Nobody's able to communicate.
Yeah, everyone's just kind of grunting at each other.
Yeah. But like so we can sort of like understand Norwegian and Swedish up to a degree, but it doesn't go the other way.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, we've been watching. It's been 5 years now of this podcast.
Yeah.
We've been trying to watch every Icelandic film ever made.
Yeah.
Oh, God,
so that was our plan,
and we are almost done.
Yeah.
We're like 208 episodes in now or something.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we've.
What's the best one?
so far.
Well, the best one that is available internationally and subtitled. That could be a few ones. Woman at War is a recent one.
Woman at War is a good one. I mean, yeah, that's actually an industry that is if the image of Icelanders as being like a very leftist country, that it might be, in part due to like, films from Iceland, where they're very often like left-leaning
Messages
politics. Yeah.
This one is about like Woman at War is about like a woman who's like an eco-terrorist. She's like taking down electricity infrastructure to stop like aluminum smelters.
Yeah.
And like if that happened actually in Iceland, like she would be jailed and like 3 people would show up and protest and then be like
she would get
beat up by
cancer.
the cops and
but it's a good film. In German it's called Gegen den Raum.
Okay.
And and then there's
Under the Tree is pretty good, a recent one as well.
Yeah, so then now
Lamb
is now in theaters.
We haven't seen that one, but that is
everyone's very excited about it.
Neither, yeah.
It's distributed by 824, so that's why people are excited.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I know that's good.
Big hit in the States, I think.
It's a very common theme in Icelandic film is even though we don't have a lot of mammals or animals in general as an island.
We only have like 6 wild animals. I'm not talking about individual animals. I'm talking about types of animals.
Yeah, isn't like the fox the largest or something? Yeah,
it's like fox and
rabbits,
mink. I guess rabbits. Yeah, and mouse, rat.
Yeah,
and
reindeer. Is the
reindeer. That's the only mammals, I think, land mammals.
Yeah. And then all films, Icelandic films, so they're all called like ram or lamb or
falcon,
or like they're just all called
strange things I heard from books told me as a
magic
child.
of the movies.
Yeah, there's a lot of magic realism. It's a very common theme in Icelandic film.
A lot of people alone on a farm being angry at their brother who lives on the farm next door.
Yeah.
It's
a very common theme.
That's a whole other thread that we should get you back
Where
on.
does the magic come in?
Most of them are not good.
Yeah.
There's like a handful that you could recommend to.
Oh, actually, hang on. No, that's a better question. What is the worst Icelandic film?
Oh wow.
It would be something that you would not be able to find. We have, because it's a small country, we can like email the directors like straight up and be like, hey, can we see your film that is not available anywhere? And
like
they
a
will
review
just send it to us. People are playing along, and we've gotten, sometimes we do an episode about a film that literally nobody has seen. Sorry, not literally, 120, how many?
144.
Yeah.
I've got you on your edge now. It actually grossed 6 krona.
No hyperbole from me anymore.
Yeah. Worst Icelandic film. Oof.
There's one called like One Big Family, which is basically a guy who goes.
It's hot dog adjacent.
He goes around Reykjavik fucking different women. Then he's like, it blows up in his face. All of them get.
I was literally in my head when I asked you what was the worst Icelandic film. I was like, is there an Icelandic cheaper by the dozen? That would be so good.
Yeah,
I was like, it sounded like that almost until you mentioned the fucking.
So in our podcast, we have a section called the Scandinavian Pain Index, where we rank each film that we watch on how much Scandinavian pain. I mean, you've probably also seen like Danish and Swedish movies that they have a common theme of like someone was abused, someone like either killed, murder, suicide. There's a corrupt official of some kind, a policeman or a politician.
The only Swedish film I've seen was an animated film about a guy who takes revenge on the entire Swedish porn industry, and like when everyone's killed, it shows the like. The bed they live in, sleeping at home, just filling with blood, even though they're not there, with the with their wives or husbands like sleeping soundly beside it.
What is this film called?
I couldn't remember. It was shown by it was shown to me by like the one Swedish guy in Ireland.
Oh wow! Yeah.
You have to see this.
That feels like a deep cut, but like I've obviously previously mentioned Nazi. What's his face?
Lars von
Trier, Danish. His films are very much this. Lukas Moodysson, the Swedish director, did Lilja Forever. Like these sort of very, like you have the grating of the film is very blue or like earth tony.
Scandi drama.
And like a family torn apart and alcoholism, secrets of the past that get unsurfaced. These are the themes that we have, and then every once in a while there's a natural disaster that happens. An earthquake or an avalanche.
Yeah, the one that we reviewed at Podfest, right? When we delayed your show for like a full half hour or something. That one was about it was a children's movie about a football team, like kids playing at a tournament, like at a little island, and in the end, the volcano erupts on the island, and everything is covered in ash, but they still play the game.
Yeah, they finish in a penalty.
Kick out.
Yeah. And that's very common. We've had there's actually a really good one called Noe Albinoe.
Oh, no, Albinoe is good.
Yeah, which we could definitely recommend. It's sort of a it's early 2000s film, sort of like indie shoegaze situation, but that one has a. Yeah, I mean, I shouldn't say it. But if you want to watch it, but there's a natural disaster that happens. I think we've had all of them. Right?
Yeah.
Eruption, earthquake.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All the ones that could happen, yeah.
Oh, okay, right. So you haven't had tornado Icelandic movie.
No. Yeah, sadly we don't have. I mean, there's a lot of
Lost at Sea kind of movies happen sometimes, or like fishermen that are in trouble.
Try to swim to land,
and a lot of Tarantino inspired crime stuff, like people trying to smuggle moonshine from Rotterdam to Reykjavik.
And a lot of
this is very cool. This is tickling Rob's brain.
And strangely, a lot of acid.
Yeah,
there's a couple of different.
In the 90s,
films.
they were like, we are selling acid. We have sheets of acid that we're LSD, and as if it was there's one movie that we haven't gotten access to.
Yeah, because the director refuses to let us see it.
It's called Suck Me Nina.
Okay.
Or I guess Give Me a Blowjob Nina or something.
Yeah.
And it's about teenage young people in Reykjavik who will do anything to get their next fix of LSD.
All right.
That makes sense. Sure. Totally how LSD works. All right. We will put links to
every single one of those movies.
everything mentioned. Your
on
podcast.
a Dropbox.
Yeah, big piracy Dropbox in the show
I
description.
mean, this is a bad plug for Berlin, but like if you like us, come see us at Comedy Cafe Berlin. We do shows there.
Oh
Yeah.
Yeah, we do
both-
have some people in Berlin.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, after you do that, you should come to our live show on January 9th in Donau 115 with us and Spaßbremse going through what happened in 2021. That thing that just happened. And
If it isn't cancelled
if
by
it,
extenuating circumstances.
we have to hope. We're doing the secret. Oh, God fucking damn it. Anyway, with that, we will catch you on the bonus feed. Ciao, ciao.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.